If you want a site for your organization, the only game in town is WordPress. And if you want to go WordPress, then you'll want to ensure that your site is secure, runs fast, and helps you grow your audience. Enter Jetpack. This is the one WordPress plugin packed with all the tools you need to achieve your goals. My guest tonight is Daniel Wormsley. He's a code wrangler at Automattic, and he was a powerful force behind Jetpack. Now he's putting his focus on Tumblr, the place where online culture is created. Good evening and welcome to the XWP Tonight Show. Good evening everyone and welcome to the show. I'd like to introduce you to our guest, Dan.
Hello. Hi, how you doing?
Dan, let's start from the beginning. Automattic, the force behind WordPress. How did Jetpack come to be part of Automattic? And similarly, what's the story with Tumblr? What kind of relationship do these divisions have with Automattic and with each other?
The history of Automattic is quite long. We're quite a mature, well, we're definitely not a startup anymore, but nor are we a global mega corporation. We started out with WordPress.com, which was basically a hosted version of WordPress where you could go and create a site without having to get your own hosting or register a domain. And we thought that that was a really great way for people to get started with WordPress and get a free site and get experience with publishing. And what happened over time is we had people saying, hey, I love all these features of WordPress.com, but when I go to my own site, I don't have them anymore. And that's not really, Matt was like, well, we want people to have the freedom to host anywhere. We need to live up to these values. And so he created, and the team then, which was quite small, created a plugin called Jetpack so that people could bring all of their stats and data and all of the extra features from WordPress.com with them to any site in the world.
Now, a question from out there. If someone is starting a business and they want to grow their audience, how do Jetpack and Tumblr help people to find their audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, but both of them have social features. So, where people can engage and share. So, engagement provides you with a way for your audience to ask you questions and interact with you. And sharing obviously lets them share that engagement with different people who might enjoy it. I think anybody who's got a brand, you kind of want to go where people are the most engaged. So I think people are realizing that it's not about going as big and as broad as possible. It's about finding the communities of people who are really going to respond to what you're doing. And so, both Tumblr and WordPress have these very strong sort of, narrow communities of interest that you can go and tap into and see how they all link to each other and explore and engage. It's not about broadcast, it's about conversation. And I think that's what those two platforms have in common.
Now in our engagement together, XWP cares a lot about site performance. We have a long history with Automattic, including Jetpack. And from our side, it's been fantastic to see our experience being productized in products like Jetpack Boost. But I'd love to hear about the relationship from your point of view. How did you come to the place of inviting XWP to partner on some of these products, and what was that experience like for you?
I've always had a huge respect for XWP and the work that you do. And of course, I'd heard of you through VIP, and I'd been to the WordPress VIP sort of meetups and heard talks and things. And somewhere along the way, I met Leo, who is a real force of nature. And he and I used to just have these great, inspiring what if kind of conversations. And I was just here's this really cool guy. And then, over time, sometimes ideas would come out of those or different collaborations, and I would ask him for advice or connect to someone who knew this or that. And I think at some point then he introduced me to you and said Amit's just come on board. He's looking for different, types of things we could do in the world, different arms of the business. And so we just started brainstorming about, should it be some kind of VIP bundle of Jetpack, or should it be, a search product or a SaaS offering, or, it was totally blue sky. And then what ended up coming along was an opportunity to create a performance plugin where, you know, we worked with you guys to kind of figure out, well, what are the real performance bottlenecks most sites hit, and which of those do we think we can kind of productize and just bake into something that could help a lot of people with a free version, and then maybe have some cloud services layered on top. And so that became Jetpack Boost. And I was actually talking to James today, like the head of Jetpack, and he was straight up, he was like, without XWP, like that product wouldn't have happened. Like, because, you know, we're in a big organization where there's a lot of different competition for resources. And, you know, when you have an idea and you feel like its moment has come, and this was an idea with a deadline, like we knew Google was going to introduce ranking changes. We knew that there was a marketing opportunity. We had to get on this quick. Like, you know, and we were able to say, yes, let's do it, because we knew that XWP could provide like the person power and the expertise, and that let us kind of really kick that thing off. So I don't think we would have, you know, if we'd had to wait until we had the resources to do it ourselves entirely in-house, I think we would have missed that opportunity. So that I think was really powerful, that combination of deep expertise on real world websites and the brainstorming that comes out of that, and then just the people who know what they're doing and can chip in.
Wow, greatly appreciate the feedback, and it's something that we're very proudly, you know, like the opportunity to make an impact with Automattic, to see Jetpack Boost and to see what it's become has been a really big point of pride for XWP, and something that we really appreciate the ongoing relationship that we have together. Can I ask you, in your view, how has the pandemic affected the growth of Jetpack and Tumblr and the type of customers you're attracting? And also the use cases that you're seeing that people are taking it on to adopt?
You know, there was definitely a pandemic bump, right? Where like there's tons of businesses trying to do digital transformation, trying to sell things online. You know, Jetpack is now an integral part of WooCommerce. So we're seeing a lot of connections coming through WooCommerce and people trying to quickly spin up stores. On the .com side, again, a lot of that sort of thing, people trying to quickly start a store or at least get their business online so that people know that they do deliveries or curbside service or whatever that is. But, you know, that's actually been tapering off the last little while. And I think, you know, there's two stories to tell there. One is the people who got up and were successful and like sustained the virtual side of their business. Like one of the first things I did when we went into lockdown here in California was I had a friend who ran a yoga studio, and she had a Squarespace site. We didn't convert it to WordPress, but, you know, she wanted her yoga lessons to go online. And you know, so we did that, and we thought it's this interim thing. I tried to do the cheapest, fastest thing, quick Amazon.com, like quick, get a camera and headphones and, you know, plug it in and see what we can do. And now that's a huge part of her business. It's like a big, like, you know, maybe a third to a half of her business, even though they're back doing lessons in person, is this sort of virtual side of things. And so if you can achieve escape velocity, like, you know, you can come out of the pandemic, you know, not only having survived, but also having more resilience in the future, and having additional ways that you can grow. And so, you know, that's been a really great thing to be part of on the .com side, with all these businesses going digital.
You know, when I thought of this question, it was specifically based on an early conversation that I had with you just when the pandemic was starting, and we were discussing about the growth that was being experienced and how people were adopting technology, and the fact that if the pandemic had hit us, I don't know, 30 years ago, pre-internet, how many businesses would not have been able to survive, to adapt, to evolve in order to still have commerce? So I think it's been a very sad situation in the world, but very interesting from the perspective of the adoption of technology for commerce.
It's a different story all over the world, right? Because also in the last 30 years, we've seen increasing urbanization that's meant that more people were affected by being locked down, and things like that. So like it's a really big multivariate what if kind of problem, but definitely like having Slack, having Zoom, having these technologies that like pretty mature and ubiquitous and can run on your phone and your laptop and your kitchen display and like, you know, that sort of thing. I mean, it's an absolute game changer. And the fact that, you know, Zoom had just achieved this sort of like stability for the masses, and similarly with Slack right around that time was pretty amazing.
Well, that's how we can have you on the XWP Tonight Show. You know, that's you're welcome to the studio. Dan, thank you so much. Love working with you. Love the conversations that we have. And thank you very much for being on the XWP Tonight Show.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.